So it's time for you to hear my opinion about The Flash. You know, everybody's got their opinion going around, so it's my turn. Now, I went to go see it twice, and I feel like if you're going to do a review on a movie, or I just feel like if you're going to just talk about your opinion for anything, you should at least try it more than once. Feel like you should give it a second try. And that's what I did with The Flash. Seeing it the first time, I truly enjoyed the film, so I was looking forward to watching it a second time. Now, I've watched films more than once, and I wasn't really looking forward to doing it, going through the whole process of reserving a seat, buying a ticket, and stuff like that. But for this one, I was. And seeing it a second time, it opened my eyes to a lot of the things that I didn't see the very first time around. Now, there were some obvious ones that I pointed out, like the visual effects, which we'll touch on that for sure. Just overall story and just, like, you know, small details, the little things that matter. Why don't we look at a few things? This is something I wanted to talk about a little bit. A 67% critic score and a 86% audience score. Now, a good amount of the audience recommends that you go watch this film, and a pretty decent amount of critics recommend that you go watch this film. For a DCEU movie, this is pretty solid. I know a lot of DCEU films don't really have a great track record for high audience and high critic scores most of the time. So for this was really good. With all the certain circumstances, you know, outside things that were revolving around the Flash film, it's pretty good to see that these are the scores from critics and audiences. It kind of eased my mind a little bit to be like, okay, this has to be a pretty solid film to go see. And it was. Now, as far as box office numbers, how they're going to do over the weekend, because I'm recording this on a Sunday and I'm hoping to get it out on a Sunday. They're looking to make about 55.1 million exactly. And with these rankings that they have for, you know, opening weekends from high to low, it puts them in the middle of the pack for other DC projects. Let's just talk about the film and what we thought. Now, watching it for the very first time, my score out of 100 was a 78, but watching it the second time around, it dropped to a 71% out of 100. That was the score I was giving it. This is my final score, and I'm here to tell you why. The story was based off of Flashpoint, and the Flashpoint Paradox is honestly one of my favorite DC animated movies of all time. The very first one is Apocalypse War, and if you watched Apocalypse War, you know that they get crazy in that film. But for a story that is going to be turned into live action like Flashpoint, they didn't have certain things that were right from Flashpoint. A version of Batman was Thomas Wayne, and he actually used guns, and it would have been pretty neat to see somebody like that. But they didn't have that because they used a variant of Batman that was still Bruce Wayne, and that was Michael Keaton's Batman. There were a few things that they did take from Flashpoint Paradox, like when Barry Allen was trying to get his powers back in the Batcave, you know, in Flashpoint Paradox. I think they did it on top of Thomas Wayne's roof, but in there they did it in Bruce Wayne's Batcave, Michael Keaton's Batman. So in the trailer, you see Michael Keaton's Batman, you know, and that's the big thing that everyone's like, whoa! And we see Kara, Supergirl. But I felt like those characters were a little bit wasted. I don't feel like Supergirl got, you know, the shine that she should have had. And the fight between her and General Zod was pretty short-lived. Obviously, for the whole point of this movie is to show why Barry shouldn't have done that, so she needed to die, or the certain situation needed to happen to show Dark Flash and tell him, hey, you know, I needed you here because I was hoping that you can help me find the answers. I almost have it figured out, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I get why, you know, that situation happened. But I felt like that character was just a little bit wasted. Also, Michael Keaton's Batman, you know, he was there to help Barry, basically kind of just get his powers and help find Supergirl. That was basically it. He kind of served no purpose at this point. He flew them to fight General Zod, you know, with Supergirl. He just repeatedly keeps dying at that point. Seeing Michael Keaton was good. Like, don't get me wrong. It was awesome seeing him fight again, and the fighting style for Batman was displayed perfectly. It kind of reminded me of Arkham Knight's fighting a little bit. All the Batman Arkham games, you know, combined together, not just Arkham Knight. It was really good to see the type of fighting style, and they displayed that perfectly. But to me personally, I just felt like, you know, Michael Keaton's Batman was just a little bit of a waste of a character. So was Supergirl, and I hope they give us another Supergirl in the new universe that, you know, James Gunn is trying to put together. Overall, the story had pretty good pacing, but there was something about it that kind of threw me off a little bit, and that was the comedy in it. Now, the difference between Marvel and DC, I feel, is that Marvel, you know, is geared towards more kid-friendly stuff. And I'm not saying that DC is not kid-friendly or it can't be kid-friendly. They sell Batman toys in the kids section at Walmart, so they can be kid-friendly. But as far as when it comes down to movies, I feel like DC should be a little bit more serious. They have a lot of darker stories than Marvel stories. Like I was just saying, like if you watch Apocalypse War, go watch Apocalypse War. It is a rated R DC animated movie, and I feel like if they want to have that same effect of success like they had in the DC animated films, they need to translate that into live action. But I get it, you want it to be for all audiences. You don't want all your DC movies to be rated R because you don't want a 7-year-old kid looking at Superman decapitate somebody. I get it. I just felt like there was a little bit too much comedy for this movie, but they were still able to put in a really compelling story between the relationship with Barry and his mother, him trying to change the past to bring her back, but then realizing that it's better to just let things go because they happened for a reason. And they foreshadowed it in the beginning of the movie with Bruce Wayne kind of saying that. When Barry Allen was explaining to him that he can go back in time, he could fix things, Bruce was basically telling him, hey, you just have to let that go. It's what makes you, it's what defines you, it's the thing that helps you build your character into becoming what it is you truly are. That's kind of like the moral of the story, and they were really good at trying to make sure that they kept that the moral of the story, which is it's better to let things go. Things happen for a reason and you gotta let it go. So with having that in there is what made me still really enjoy the film. Ezra Miller, there's a lot of people that don't like him for certain reasons, but as far as we're just talking about him specifically acting as the character Barry Allen, he did a very excellent job. He is a very good Barry Allen. He is a great Flash. I just wish I was able to see him a bit more, because if you think about it, you only got him in the Justice League, the Joss Whedon one, and you only got him in the Snyder Cut. We didn't really get to see him display all his powers that Flash really possesses. They tried to throw in as much as they could in this movie, because I'm pretty sure we're never going to see Ezra Miller again. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. James Gunn may pull a rabbit out of his hat and just be like, hey, we're actually going to keep him. We're just solely speaking on him playing the character Barry Allen. He did a very excellent job. And for how his acting was throughout the movie is what really kept me engaged with the film as well. Now let's talk about the visual effects. I was going to speak on the visual effects, and we are. My golly, it was hella janky at sometimes. The very beginning where Barry had to go save the kids that were falling out of the building, it looked very weird. And Andy Muschietti has been saying that it's supposed to look weird on purpose, but bro, you spent $300 million. If I spent over $250 million, I'm expecting my visual effects to look top notch. You gotta put a little bit of money in for that visual effects to kind of look as good as it's supposed to. But hey, if that's what he's sticking by, if Andy Muschietti is saying that it's supposed to look like that for a reason, okay, fine, let him have it. What also threw me off a little bit was the interactions between young Barry and current Barry. There were times where you could tell that the facial movements were a little bit wonky, but something like that is very hard to pull off in a film. So I wasn't really too upset when it looked a little bit off at times. When they were in the Speed Forces, where you could see it again, where the visual effects were very 4 out of 10, because there were just some times where it took me out of the movie a bit. Let's wrap this up with cameos. So towards the end of the film, when Dark Flash went to stop current Barry because he felt that he was the reason that he couldn't find a solution to his problem of constantly trying to replay this situation over and over, we saw all the worlds colliding, and we got to see a lot of cameos. We saw the Superman from the 1940s, we saw an old version of Flash, we saw Christopher Reeve's Superman, we saw Supergirl in that same exact universe, and we saw Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage's Superman. and it looked very ugly. I'll be honest, it looked very, very ugly, but it was also really nice to see because there were so many rumors going around that Nicolas Cage was going to play Superman, this, that, the third. And they were just like, you know what? If you want to see Nicolas Cage Superman, here you go. The very end of the film, Barry goes back to the future. Well, back to the present, not really back to the future. To try and prove his dad's innocence into moving the tomato cans a little bit higher above the shelf so that way he could look up into the camera, because that was the issue. That was the reason why no one believed Barry's father's story. Barry went and fixed that. He went back to the present. His father was finally proven innocent of the situation. But all of a sudden, you see at the end, Barry gets a call from Bruce Wayne. And who comes out? George flippin' Clooney. Probably the worst Batman film of all time. But seeing George Clooney and, you know, the type of time that we're in where we're seeing all these the whole multiverse thing, and we're seeing these different variants, actors from before who have played these characters, it was still very good to see George Clooney. And then lastly, Jason Momoa. Barry went to explain to Aquaman that, hey, this is what's happened, blah, blah, blah. He was super drunk, so I don't think Arthur was really paying attention to that. I don't know what that scene truly means, so in the comments below, if you can enlighten me on what you guys think, what you all are theorizing, that'd be really cool. I want to do a video about that and see what you all are thinking. If you haven't watched The Flash, it is a very good movie to go watch. It's a fun movie, very good story. Visual effects are a little bit wonky. It could be a little bit too much of a comedy at sometimes, but overall, this was probably, in my humble opinion, the third best DCEU movie that has released in theaters. All right, we're not counting the Justice League Snyder Cut. We're not counting the Suicide Squad that came out on HBO Max. We're talking about the Snyderverse movies that have came out in theaters. My third best movie. Number 2 is Wonder Woman, because I just thought, you know, the first Wonder Woman, not the second one. I thought that story was very, very awesome. And number 1, obviously, is Man of Steel with Henry Cavill. You hold a special place in our hearts. You know, I gotta have Man of Steel number 1. Leave a comment down below on what you guys think of the film. Leave a like on this video because it helps out so much. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button.